Morocco.
Okay, I have a small set of anecdotes that I will summarize in one little story. We lose a lot of people because, I mean, a lot of people, maybe 5%, 10% of our task force. But we lose people because their parents and their surrounding friends and ecosystem tells them that, why don't you go get a real job? This is not a real job. A startup is not. Go to a bank or the government or something like that is dependable and can last for a career or a lifetime. So believe it or not only do they not believe in equity, but you have to pay more than banks and insurance companies and government can pay to keep people because they don't consider it as a job. It's sad, but it's something I faced maybe half a dozen times where in a performance review, I am told that my family's putting pressure on me to get a real job, and being in a startup is not a real job. Of course, the issue of equity is not valued. I mean, when you want to give somebody stock options, they'd rather get short-term, immediate gains or salary or bonuses rather than bet with you on the future. And that's not very encouraging for a founder or for an incubator because you kind of rely on a bunch of people who don't believe in the future. Otherwise, they would have taken equity because it might be worth much more than that short-term salary thing, right? So just about talent, that's what I wanted to add, is basically getting talent is one thing. Keeping them when they get pressure from around friends and family. Look at your cousin, he's working at a bank and he's making X and Y a month. So you have to match that and exceed it so that you kind of stay in the same league.
So it's a whole chain of things from the culture all the way to the talents throughout the life cycle. But Adnan started a discussion on raising money from a napkin. I'll start, we'll shift a little bit to financials, and Akram, I will shoot a question in a minute, but I'll start with a little story also. In '99, I was in grad school. First time I landed in the Valley for a job interview at Apple. After the interview, I went to a party with the Apple guys, with my classmate. We left with $50,000 in our pocket for a startup we had. 7 years later, that startup died. It's a hardware technology that became obsolete 6 months later, but it's normal. 7 years later, 2007, again, I built a startup with a more formal startup out of MIT, 5 high-level engineers, formal, with experience. It was in the software for the fashion industry, with even a deal with Zara as a client. I'm trying to say it's a much formal startup. For a year and a half, we were not able to raise money. From easy to completely almost impossible. So Akram, can you run us through the VC cycle that has been known in the Silicon Valley? Is it easy to get money? There is a wide belief that it's you go with a business plan, you get money. I'm sure it's not the case. Yet we know there is money. In the last 5 years, startups in the Valley raised $35 billion. So there is money. What does it take to get it? Is it easy? Is it hard?
Well, I can tell you I was not able to raise money for my company last year. So it's funny because the answer is not easy or hard to raise money. The fact is there is a lot of money. So you mentioned $35 billion were invested in startups across different stages. So there is tons of money in startups. But imagine here, there is a bottleneck here. If I put pressure here, the water is going to be here. So the pressure is going towards, to the right where there is no bottlenecks. I think the fact that technology has been so commoditized that anybody could get started has moved the pressure from the startup field. So that's why investors are looking for traction, ideas. This is all over the place. Startups are burgeoning in Philippines, in India, in China. So we're past this. Is there money? There is. But for what and for whom? What are you selling? I lived there. Last year I was trying to raise money. But, I'm competing with 2,000 other entrepreneurs, who have great ideas. Some are product managers from Google, from Facebook. They're done. They want to try something new. So there is money, but there is tons of competition. So that's why if you come from a different country to Silicon Valley, you're increasingly getting, you have more competition than the local ones. Nobody knows you, and you don't know the market very well. So is there money? Yes, there is. If you have some kind of a robotics idea, some new technology in hardware, in software, in medical, you've done tons of homework to validate. You go there. See, I've seen Moroccans making it to Silicon Valley who came from out of nowhere. They did their homework. They connected with the right ecosystem. We have few here. Maybe I saw Mehdi Alawi who did. He was here. So there are people who know how to make it. If they're real entrepreneurs. They figure it out. What is an entrepreneur? It's a problem solver. It's a salesman. A strong problem solver and a strong salesman. Okay? So, they have to go leverage every single resource they have, right? So they have to leverage all the resources. Now it's so, it's much easier for Moroccan here in the US to be in Silicon Valley than a Moroccan living in Silicon Valley to raise money. You have all those US-funded organizations here. You have those the MIT global startups and the Endeavors, and they give you workshops, they teach you, they connect you. Endeavor gives you, with Amin Hizaz, we had really great connections. So if you do your homework, you don't need anybody. Just leverage this ecosystem. I think Moroccan entrepreneurs, I keep hearing, this is a third world country and we don't have money and all that stuff. I think Moroccan entrepreneurs in this time are one of the luckiest entrepreneurs in the world. They're lucky to have those funds. They're lucky to have these ecosystems. This relationship between Morocco and Silicon Valley that connects them so quick with, I am the founder of TechWadi, and I didn't know that TechWadi had connections with MIT startups last year. And I was really amazed by the amount of how Dr. Osama Hassanin took it since we left it, and they made it so easy for those Arab entrepreneurs and all African entrepreneurs, by the way. You become Moroccans when you have great ideas, so don't feel bad.
I'll let Adnan.
So I think there is money, but for the right investors. It's not like VCs make great decisions, It's timing. It's not like who would think that Facebook is a great idea? It's just great timing. MySpace was a little bit too early, right? So there is money, but for the right person.
Raising money in the US. Can you talk about specific cases? Who did you meet? How did it go? Did you raise money, and why not? Why yes?
I don't know if you guys have seen a show called Shark Tank. It's as it is. As you see in Shark Tank is as you meet VCs in the US. Same questions. Do you have a product? Who's your team? Have you sold that product? How much money you make? What's your profit margins? A lot of these questions. You have to pass all that. So you have to be ready for all that before you go meet any VC, here or in the US. In the US, right, a lot of people think Silicon Valley is a spot to go for technology. Everybody can get money there. So it's not only here, it's anywhere in the world. So imagine how many people are going to the Silicon Valley looking for that money. And how many VCs are available for these people? How much time you need to wait to meet these VCs? How much money you have to stay in the Silicon Valley? It's very expensive. It's not like Morocco. Rent is $2,000 a month. There is a lot of things you have to figure out before going to the Silicon Valley. For me, I used to live in the Silicon Valley, so I lived there. I used to work there. I was a finance director for BMW, and at the same time, I created my startup. So I had time. I had to study income. At the same time, I was looking for capital. So I had enough money to sustain my life so I can start a startup. If you go from here, whatever money you think it's not enough once you go there. So I met VCs over there. It took a lot of time. We started with one idea. We'd finish up with, we changed it like 13 times or 14 times. We keep flipping. This is not my first startup. This is my 8th startup. For 7 startups, I didn't get money. I got it in the 8th one. So it takes tenacity. It takes wanting and believing in that idea to get it. It's not just you're going to spend 2 weeks in the Silicon Valley, and you're going to come back with a check. It's not going to happen.
Omar, you also raised money for Orbeo. Can you share specific experience?
Yeah, Yeah, I was lucky to raise in Morocco, in Dubai, and in the US. So the stories are very different. VCs in Silicon Valley also compete for startups who are going to make it. And the people who get money easily are the people who don't need that money to seed or to found their startups. They're the people who have already made it a few times. When you make it a few times in the Valley, typically you're sitting on a couple $100 million, if not much more. So you don't necessarily need it, but you get the VC for other reasons than the capital. We will talk about that maybe later. And so basically, the raising money in Silicon Valley, if you have not made it a couple of times, so now how do you crack it to make it the first time is another question. But it is not easy. It is very complicated, and the old days where just by knowing the guy and and you get access to seed and then business angels and then Series A and so on, that smooth story is gone. Now, even though capital is really available, it doesn't get allocated very easily to just any startup. So that's one thing. That said, I'd like to just say one word that I heard kind of from Adnan and Akram. If I am a Moroccan startup, I would never go after the US market right now. There's so much to do, and the topic is Africa now. I just went to Senegal, went to a couple. There's a lot, and the ideas and the products we have and the services we provide, in my little world that I know very well, are so much more needed in blue oceans like Africa and other places than in the US, because then you're competing with crazy capital, crazy startups, and 20, 30, 50 startups that are doing the exact same niche, addressing the same niche you're addressing. So if you believe in that red ocean, blue ocean theory, going south or east, which is what we're doing with a couple of our companies, is much more efficient, in my opinion. And also, there's less competition when you talk to the VCs in Dubai than talking to, or even getting to talk to Andreessen Horowitz or one of these Greylocks or big guys. Getting a meeting is a big issue. You can still do it. We have access and so on. But getting their capital, you have to pass 20,000 layers of things. Doing it in other places is much easier, in my opinion.
But
even from
point.
a market and customer perspective, not just from raising money perspective. It's point. Easier to go south and east than going to the US.
Not going to the US from a customer point of view or from a VC point of view? Because in both cases, the customer, if you see the S-curve of any technology product, it's much higher in the US from both a customer and an investor. So why would you go south and east?
Okay, well, I just came back from DLD in Munich. It's a very good digital event, and I was amazed at what's going on in Berlin, in London. Silicon Valley now is kind of an overrated thingy. If you're not there and came out of Stanford and doing a few things, I would not go there just to raise money or to make it, because you will be just out of luck very, very quickly, and it costs so much money to get there and to stay there and to live there and to hire there and to rent office space. It's just insane. For what? I would not recommend to the audience that the first reflex, Silicon Valley is great. If you want to get a job, it's great. There's a huge need for brains, and you can gather some experience, maybe improve your resume and so on. But if you want to succeed as an entrepreneur, planet Earth is so rich and wide and big and large that there's a lot of other opportunities to go after. And in our case, where we're going is south and east from here, raising money in places where we have less competition, where our products are taken into consideration and valued and appreciated, and we can also sign a few customers before we go see these investors, much more easier, and so on and so on. Sales cycle is shorter for us in these places than it would be in the US, coming from here or from Africa in general.
This actually leads us to the next phase or next part of the discussion. Many around the world believe that, in what you said, maybe the Silicon Valley is losing its edge, maybe not, but for sure money is there. But through these phases, the Valley evolved from a startup hub to more of a scale-up hub. So Can you, Akram, emphasize on versus starting but going to scaling up? What does the Silicon Valley give you in terms of network, expertise, access to going global that you don't find elsewhere? We see a number of startups. You mentioned one of them earlier that it was successful here. Then it went for scaling up to the Valley. So can you briefly about specific points on scaling globally?
Well, first of all, Silicon Valley is definitely not losing its edge. Definitely not. Actually, right now, when you have the right business, is where you want to be. And of course, there is great funding, great resources. Very, very hard to find. It's an ecosystem that you cannot mimic. Okay? So it's going to be very hard. Right now, you're going through cycles. I think the cycle of innovation is ending. The cycle of boom is ending right now, where 4 or 5 years ago, I think we're kind of disagree with that. Now, about 5 years ago, you still could raise money based on a napkin if you're an ex-Facebook or Google. Some people, there is so much money that investors need to start investing at some point. They invest in ideas with very unique people who failed enough, who had some successes. And now the cycle is fading. As I have told many of you who were looking to raise money and asked them to come to the Valley, told them next year is going to be very hard. It's not going to be as easy as 2015. So if you want to raise now. Now investors are going to be very tough on valuations. You're not going to see those crazy Uber valuations. They're going to start looking at balance sheets. It's always, I lived 2 cycles. I lived the 99.com.gone cycle, and this one, I'm living it. And I can tell you, for our company, for example, where I am right now, we have a $200 million round, and we're oversubscribed, so there is tons of money for the right ideas. So for scaling up, I think it all depends on your market. You have an enterprise software that you started here, and you think software companies will use it in the US, that's what you can scale up. But if you were doing Hemizet here, you're not going to scale up Hemizet in the US, right? So you can expand where the market makes sense to you in the Arab world, because this is an idea that already exists there. So there is no model that you can really look at. I think the model where this is that you should have a great education system. Those are the universal rules that are not going to change, right? Great universal education system. And connect that education system with the startup ecosystem here. I'm very interested about the mathematician thing because it's the easier. In school, thank God with my experience, I got to meet some talented developers. I think in Al Butula team we have one of the most talented developers in this country, and other players, they know that. So in software, it's hard because you don't give opportunities to develop and code in university. But math is the cheapest thing, but guess what? Right now, mathematics is very valuable. So let's start there, the education system, startup ecosystem, and then everything else we learned. We'll learn through trial and error.
So, Tarek, we talked about this earlier, but Akram said that Silicon Valley is not for scaling up for every kind of enterprise or startup. He talked about a few examples. In your mind, what is the right model or startup that can scale up in Silicon Valley? Is it technology-based? Is it science-based? Is it manufacturing-based? What is, living there for more than 20 years and having gone through a number of startups, which ones fit the culture, the environment, to go through the whole cycle of scaling up from the Valley?
Yeah, I think what we've seen right now is we have a lot of machine language, M2M, machine-to-machine language. We've got companies like Cloudera, Hadoop, and this is based, again, on algorithms. You need a lot of data scientists. So all of you over here, really, there is a lot of demand for data scientists and for algorithms and for packages that does smart stuff. And so for scaling today, this is what's needed. All these companies are using companies like Nutanix. There is no more worrying about being elastic or how many servers you need. It's just a click, and it's auto-click, and it's done. So as far as IT automation for scaling today is available, I think in the US there is a lot of experience there. This is what's so good about, in Silicon Valley, you can hire from other companies. So if you're going to scale for a startup, you have to make sure that you have somebody on board who has already scaled. It's not a place where you're going to learn something new because you've got VC money and everybody's calling you, how you doing? Well, what are some of the issues you're facing? You don't want to say, well, I have somebody who's new. But you have to have somebody who has done it before. And then this is some of the things I want to share with you guys is the new world, the machine-to-machine language, algorithms. Everything is automated and learn it. And if you have a startup companies, really it has to be part of your platform. So Cloudera, Hadoop, Nutanix, all this kind of tools. I think we are beyond Amazon, AWS stuff. So this is the next generation, needs math, and all you guys have it. That's what I have to say.
Very important point. Startup by a young entrepreneur, scaling up by a veteran. So Adnan, can you share? You just mentioned you're going global, started from Silicon Valley to Morocco, and then you're going south. How are you approaching the scale up from a strategy and also from a talent point of view?
I mean, talent-wise, we found some good talents here in Morocco. I mean, I did some mentoring here, like a couple months ago here with StartUp Maroc, and I saw a lot of talents. I mean, there is talents. I think, for me, was the access to capital is the biggest hurdle. We have some good talents here in Morocco. In terms of growing, a lot of my customers here have subsidiaries in the sub-Saharan Africa. So they're asking us to move with them. It's a much easier transit if you have a customer and you have income coming up in these places to go, because you guarantee at least some money to pay for the charges coming up from there, than just going yourself and investing in some new place that you don't know how it is. I mean, it's not easy to go to some new place and build a business. If someone tells you it's easy, he's lying. It's absolutely a new mentality, a new challenge, many things. So for us, it was easier because we have clients that took us over there and they opened the road for us. And I suggest to people to find clients here who have representation somewhere in Africa to help them make that move. That's what I did.
And if you allow me, I don't want to sound too contradictory with Adnan when it comes to talent. It's not like there is no talent here in Morocco. There is not enough. Because when, at some point, you'll get an opportunity. There are some great things about Morocco, this ecosystem. Give me 30 seconds, if you don't mind. There is not enough. When there is like a company that wants to kind of scale up and need to hire 200 developers at one shot, they're going to have a hard time. They will have to bring from outside.
What I want to say is that if we, trust me on this, if we compare Silicon Valley to Morocco, there is enough to talk about. So we don't want to go into the comparison.
Yeah.
It's really, that's why we try to raise
We're not comparing.
the best for these entrepreneurs. What could they leverage in Morocco, in Africa, and what would they leverage from Silicon Valley? Exactly. So can you share on the same, going global, scale up, which you're going through?
So if you want 200 engineers in Silicon Valley, you're going to have the same hard time than 200 engineers here. Not because our schools spit out enough engineers and theirs don't or whatever, but it's just that they have enough engineers, but they have also a lot of demand. Over here, there's like not enough engineers, but there's not as much demand. So that's one thing. The other thing about scaling out and up and global and so forth, I mean, what you need is two things, in my opinion. One is people who have done it before, because you don't set up distribution channels, attack new geographies, and succeed in faraway territories if you have people on staff who are doing it for the first time and playing with your capital to go through the trial error cycle with your money. You don't have you never have enough to play games. You have enough to execute when you're lucky. And the other one is obviously capital, because you can run out of money before you achieve your goal of reaching enough markets to get to the the breaking point that you were looking for. So that's one thing. I mean, in my universe, the small ecosystem I was able to set up, we have two principles. Number one is I noticed that in Morocco, the hardest thing to do is to get paid for something you have delivered. So we never do anything that is not negative working capital. So if I don't get prepaid for a service, and I learned that from the Meditel days because TopUp works that way, and it's a beautiful business. You distribute, you get the top, the top up out of the gateway, and basically you get paid, and then it gets consumed a few months or weeks or days later, and basically, and there's even like a lot of top up that never gets consumed because people are tourists, they come, they go, their SIM card still has credit in it, and so on. So my first learning was anything we do, and we do now about, as I said earlier, between close to 10 different businesses, all of them are prepaid. And that helps me because when I scale out of Morocco, I basically export what I have here. I don't have anything else to offer. And that is also prepaid. And so basically, I don't need much capital to get going. It's just the first couple of months setting up the office in Dubai, Internet City, or whatever. It's a little bit of money because you have to pay rent 1 year ahead and details like that. But and I never do any business, or I get involved, or our portfolio companies never are interested in companies that stay local or that don't have a business that cannot go out of Morocco, because Morocco is way too small, and we have a couple of companies that have 91 market share in Morocco, 91% market share, and we still make below $2 million. I mean, if you have 1% market share in anything you do in the US, you're probably flying in a jet. In any business, anything from collecting garbage to, you name it. So here, even when you think you made it locally, you're still barely like paying your charges and so forth. So you have to get out. And you have to plan for that when you decide which products or you're going to build, which companies you're going to invest in ahead of time. So these are the two things I use for trying to get out of here, is basically this prepaid principle that is key to everything we do, and products that are very local in their nature, I don't invest in, basically.
So we started with a few questions. Is the Valley heaven for startups? And I think through the discussion we were able to go through from the creation to the hiring to the development to scaling up. It depends on cases, and our panelists share with us that it's not bad to be here. You know, there are opportunities for everywhere. I want to leave, we have 10 minutes left for questions, Q&A, but before going to Q&A, maybe 10 seconds each, one final advice from the Valley to these entrepreneurs. 10 seconds. Any advice you have to the entrepreneurs? Quick.
I used to drive to work every day, and I passed by Apple headquarters. This is back when they had the Emacs. You remember the Emacs Max machine, orange and blue? And then they put a big sign that says "Think Big," and they only had like 3 months worth of payroll for the employees. This is really kind of shocking. Apple has 3 months, and there's the big sign of "Think Big." So I like to tell everybody to really think big, because on the average, some of us will make it. So keep that spirit high. That's what I can say. And if you want to go to Silicon Valley, go and try it, because it doesn't hurt to try. So keep that up. Thanks.
So I think you start thinking big. It's off that recommendation is gone. Actually, I would build in, so number one is do your homework. And if you're focused on this Moroccan market or this African or regional market, I would build on Omar's experience. Focus on a prepaid market. Focus on the consumer. Because if you do the B2B, you're going to have to raise a lot of money. I think, I'm talking from experience in the Moroccan market. Prepaid and consumer is a great idea. Focus on that in Morocco. There's great needs. There are different things to do.
I think my advice to everybody here is to get out of the negativity that's surrounding a lot of Moroccan entrepreneurs. Don't listen to anyone. If you believe in something, just go ahead and do it. If you believe you have a good idea, pitch it. Don't be afraid. Don't listen to people who ask you to go and get a salary instead of your dream job, to create value. If you believe you have a solution for a problem, and you believe you can add value to something, pursue it. Pursue it and you're gonna make it. It's just a matter of time. If you're not gonna make it today, you'll make it tomorrow. But just do it. Believe in yourself. That's the only thing I would say.
Okay, I heard Apple and I heard believe in yourself. I think Steve Jobs said, stay foolish, stay hungry. A little bit of foolishness is always what made the Sergey Brin and all these guys come out of Stanford and think they can kill Yahoo. If they had thought about it long enough, they would never have started Google, because there were enough search engines back then, Lycos, Alta Vista for the older ones with gray hairs, and Yahoo and so on. So I think that for African entrepreneurs, there's a lot to do in Africa. A lot of companies that are actually now raising or have raised money in Europe or in Silicon Valley are trying to address our market. So why let them win in the market where we are local and where we have all the credentials to be winners? In my opinion,